it's my great honor to introduce today's speaker and teacher. He's no other than Dr. Eng-Kong Tan. He's our long-time Dharma teacher and a long-time supporter for the association. So who is Dr. Tan? Dr. Tan is a consultant psychiatrist and analytic psychotherapist practicing in Pymble, Sydney. And he is the founder president of the Australia Associations of Buddhist Counsellors and Psychotherapists, AABCAP, and its director of training and Adjunct Professor at Nan Tien University. So over the last 40 years, Dr. Tan has been presenting keynote addresses, workshops, and seminars on psychotherapy, spirituality, Buddhism, and meditation in Australia and overseas. In fact, the first time I met Eng-Kong was like, I think 15 years ago. He's one of the speakers in the International Buddhist Conference in Malaysia. That was the first time I met you. And then I come to Australia to look for you. So today, Dr. Tan is going to enlighten us on the topic of wisdom in the time of this pandemic. So he's going to show us compassion and wisdom. One without the other doesn't work. Right, Dr. Tan? All right, without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Eng-Kong Tan.
Thank you, Meredith. Thank you, the Australian Association of Engaged Buddhists, for inviting me yet again. And thank you for a very generous and very kind introduction. Thank you. I should be thanking Meredith. I should be thanking all of you for just being here. For just being here. Thank you. And thank you to all you Zoomers, all of you on screen. Thank you for joining us on screen, which is most sensible. Tonight is heck of a downpour out there. And I'm sure some of you would have last minute come in by Zoom because it wouldn't be wise to drive in the rain from where you are, most likely very far away from this Buddhist library. Thank you for the effort to Zoom in. Thank you. Wisdom in the time of COVID. When Bhante Tejadamo sent us the email to volunteer to help on some of these Wednesday evenings, I happened to be reading a book on wisdom. So I emailed Meredith and Bhante to say, okay, I've got these 3 titles on wisdom. Which one you think is best for this coming meeting? And I heard from Meredith, Bhante, without a pause, insisted that it is wisdom in the time of COVID. And then as I gathered my thoughts and gathered my facts and information and do this reading and do that self-reflection, I then realized why Bhante insisted on in the time of COVID. And I want to be able to help in this time of COVID, myself and others as much as possible. Because as I suggested and as Meredith read, there's been a lot of very good and very necessary talks and conferences from all over the world, from Buddhist centers, from members of the Sangha in this time of the COVID, and they're all very good and they're all excellent. And they've mainly been on compassion, understandably, necessarily. now is just beginning to be on wisdom. I was just talking to my good colleague, Roshi Jeffrey Dawson, on the telephone today. And he said, Eng-Kong, I can't come to the talk, but I want you to know, I too want to talk about wisdom at this time of the pandemic now, because it is the other wing of the butterfly that we mustn't forget in times of stress, in times of crisis, in times of pandemics that comes to us regularly. Small pandemics, big pandemics, as you understand. So, next slide. Hope you don't mind I give a bit of theory, a bit of background to sedge into the topic. I think it's important with a very wise and very learned, a very compassionate audience that all of you are, to perhaps begin with putting on the table that the spiritual wisdom, which here can be also called theoretical wisdom, but originally the Greeks call it Sophia, is the understanding the deep nature of reality. Now, that is transcendental. That gets us into the intuitive area of wisdom. But today, we also know how to intuit. There's a science and art of intuiting, which will be one of the main focus that I'd like to share with you. But not forgetting practical wisdom. In fact, one definition of wisdom is practical knowledge. Not that Sophia is not practical, but more obviously practical. Do you know what I mean? Is making decisions, and very often very, very difficult decisions. And before the start of this talk, one of you have already come to me and was already sharing with me a very serious moral dilemma arising from the pandemic, very personally affecting this beautiful human being. But practical wisdom plus Sophia, phronesis, can help us make the decisions, because it is about doing the right thing at the right time for the right reasons, which is so difficult, especially in a time of pandemic. Without the pandemic, there are other things going on that also makes it difficult. Because as we begin to understand the pandemic some more, after all, the pandemic has always been there. It's just become more obvious, thankfully, to the whole world. Yeah, as the Buddha would say, first noble truth, there is suffering. So, if I get the time, I would like to add what I've learned and what I've gathered mainly from this book that I was reading, I was telling you, by Dilip Jest, just entitled Wiser. Yeah? And quite a bit of stuff on the slides comes from Dilip Jest. Dilip Jest is the 2012 president of the American Psychiatric Association. And he is specializing in psychogeriatrics, a field that his colleagues told him you got mad to be get into, because it's all pain, 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 which it is. But he discovered something very beautiful there. He got on to realizing from his patients with age, with experience, often wisdom arises more and more. And another definition of wisdom is it comes with age, doesn't it? Meaning, really, it comes from suffering. That's my input. From suffering, our wisdom and compassion grows. So, when in common parlance we say, who are wise people? We automatically can feel wise people are warm-hearted, compassionate, open-minded, open-hearted. And for many of us, Mother Teresa is already in the room. And whatever other Mother Teresas you have in mind, Bodhisattvas, yeah. Self-reflective and empathic. They are good listeners. Believe me, they are regular meditators. And I'm using the word meditation here in the broadest possible sense. Because Ian Thorpe was also meditating when he swam the blue line. You get me? And that's when his excellence comes out. Yeah. So all forms of meditation, all forms of deep getting to that spacious stillness, that peace. Doing what is right. The Eightfold Path is right, this, right, that, right, this, right, that. That's the right, I mean. Doing what is right from our beliefs, our convictions. But more important than our beliefs and convictions, and by the way, we must hold our beliefs and convictions not fanatically, you know. I'm sure you know that. But perhaps for this talk, for this evening, talking to myself, sharing with you, it's that right bit that comes from the Eightfold Path, right. So it's not right or wrong. It is what is skillful. Yeah. Wise people are like that, including all of you. You are on the path. You are on the path, even if you don't officially recognize it. And extremely challenging to be still and resolute in the midst of uncertainty and chaos, which is still happening with the pandemic. Now we are in the chaos of vaccination. Less chaos, thankfully. Now we are in the uncertainty of which vaccine, when, how, who, aren't we? I'm reminded of what Thich Nhat Hanh said. From his experience as a refugee and learning from the experiences of so many boat people, from his heart, he said in one of his teachings, all it needs is for one of us to be able to be still and resilient, whilst the rest of us are panicking on the boat. That's wisdom. Another component of wisdom. From the scientific point of view, donkeys years ago, long time ago, IQ was the thing. Then we realized IQ gets you the job, But it's EQ that gets you the promotion. And then EQ became the thing. And we all improving, increasing our EQ all the time. And then we reach a certain age and we realize the spirituality quotient is even more powerful, more necessary, more wise, more full of wisdom. And I'd like to share with you later on, related to a spirituality quotient, and you pick up the spirituality very easily from the wisdom quotient, which today has already got 3 scales, and the latest one by Dilip Jess, the book I mentioned. I'll share with you very quickly in our limited time, the wisdom scale, which cannot be separated from the compassion scale, the 2 wings of the butterfly. Is that okay? Next. Panna. I'm sharing with you what you already know. Pali, Prajna. Perceiving the true nature of reality, intimately experienced. Not the head, not the heart, not the body, all of it. The Buddha even said, the true knowing is the experiencing. Beyond conceptual knowledge. In the context of meditation, every time we meditate, officially, unofficially, in 1 second or in 1 minute, or for 1 whole hour, 2 times a day, or for the whole day during a retreat, most of the day anyway. It is ultimately the understanding of the 3 characteristics of all things. Nature, change. Right now the rain is changing. 1 moment loud, 1 moment soft. By the way, you can still hear me? Okay. Dukkha. And ultimately, anatta. And of course, in the Eightfold Path, as mentioned before, one of the 3 divisions, right understanding, right view, most often put as the first 2 of the 8. Right thought, right intentions, and all its details. The wisdom part of the Eightfold Path. I don't have to elaborate. You are very at home. Next, please. Next, please. If I might bring the world of psychology again and again, through a lot of research, and certainly through the latest research from Dilip and his partners, they had the audacity to even break down the components. It takes a lot of guts to do that, you know. You almost can feel heretical to do that, you know. It can be done. Thank you, Dilip. Pro-social attitudes and behaviors arises compassion and empathy. Emotional regulation, arriving at contentment, and very importantly, positivity. That's why every time I meditate and every time I help someone else to meditate, I always insist on myself and others. If you can, if you want to, if it suits you, complete every meditation with a self-affirmation, if appropriate, if it feels right for you. Because we need to affirm our own goodness, our own capacity for gratitude, our own gladness in life, our own, the 4Gs. And we need to affirm it in ourselves whilst we collect it from everyone else. Now it's scientifically proven through positive psychotherapy, positive psychiatry, the importance of the emotional regulation to arrive at positivity. To be able to balance decisiveness with the acceptance. It's so difficult to accept that everything most of the time is uncertain. It's uncertain whether we'll get all this gizmo ready. It's uncertain whether it will rain or shine or there'll be an earthquake or we'll get an announcement over the radio because of the pandemic. Sydney is in lockdown now. As has happened in the middle of a lot of conferences and meetings. But balancing. Shall I still get out of the house? Shall I still go where I want to go? Including more recently, shall I wear the mask or shan't I wear the mask? Because it's uncertain. But I've got to decide. Isn't that true? Reflecting, reflecting, reflecting as you are doing right now. First, know thyself, understand. The Buddha had to understand himself first, isn't it? Same with Sigmund Freud, he had to understand himself first. The Buddha did it by meditating on himself. Huh? The Buddha, the Sigmund Freud did it by analyzing his own dreams, which is another form of meditation. Social decision-making and pragmatic knowledge of life. Every moment we have to decide, not just for ourselves, not just for Jonathan or for Frank or for all of you, we have to also decide for the whole Sangha. Because whatever we decide, although it might appear to be, first, very importantly, take care of ourselves, but immediately in taking care of ourselves, we are also taking care of others. But immediately, it's for everyone. So social decision-making is such a difficult one. And see how the politicians, and see how the medical people struggle to make a decision during the pandemic period. And they are still struggling, aren't they? Better still, they tell us they are struggling. Tell us how they struggle, better still. Next. Next slide. One more. One more. And that face also belongs to all of you. And you too have that face. And I bow to you. Next slide. Should I repeat it again? Pro-social attitudes and behaviors. When you're in that realm, spontaneous, random acts of kindness occurs. But you can increase it by purposely be pro-social, which is the opposite of antisocial. But purposely behaving with kindness, volunteering, and I really salute Meredith, Ryan, Angus, every one of you volunteering in so many ways for so many good people, for so many good causes. Giving and receiving lessons in life. It's got to be both ways, you know. It's not just giving, you know, you also got to receive it. And actually, it comes down to, in this psychology book, it says virtues, the paramitas. Both in the study of happiness and in the study of wisdom, ultimately, it points to paramitas. Cultivating our virtues. All of us had to cultivate patience as we drove here or as we swam here as quickly as we could. What a great opportunity to cultivate patience. And thank you for being so patient, waiting till we start. Next slide. Am I going far too slowly, darling? I'm still in time. She's got this lovely smile for me. Oh, by the way, you've got the wrong speaker here this evening. The one who's wiser is actually my wife. And I seriously mean that, you know. Thank you, Jonathan. And the next slide. It's natural, you know. We were all born with it. Things get in the way through life. But only to help us to get back in. No mud, no lotus. Next slide. Next slide. No, we prefer to stay longer with that. You're correct, Ken. We shouldn't move too quick from that one. Because we all need more empathy for ourselves and for others. You know, the Australian-New Zealand Association of Psychotherapists course, that is 3 years. The first year of the course is all about, for one whole year, the art and science of empathy. And I'm still learning, and I'm still doing my best to improve and keep improving. Resilience. Find support, give support, being connected to others. And you wisely choose your sanghas. Practice optimism. Not easy, especially in the time of the pandemic. Gloom and doom. Huh? But even in the gloom and doom, huh? There are opportunities for optimism. I felt so optimistic. I was so grateful when I saw that shot on one of the YouTubes or one of my iPhone. You remember that scene where they showed in somewhere in Italy from the balconies, because they were all locked down, they started singing to each other? Remember that one? Some of us do. And then later on, many more video clips on from different parts of the world. A tune begins, a song begins, with a multicultural, multiracial group. And then the camera zooms into another part of the world and they join in the singing with such joy, such optimism in the midst of gloom and doom. Join in the optimism. So easy to say, don't think things personally. So easy to say. I still take things too personally very often. Only to remind myself, hey, shit happens, man. Just accept it. And of course, as we self-reflect, whether through therapy, whether through life experiences, and whether through a lot of mud called stress, we realize that's our best teacher. Next slide. No. This is the biggest challenge, or for me at least. By the way, as you are, I hope you're still here with me. I hope whilst you're with me, I'm sure you are reflecting about yourself and your pandemic and your whatever. And reflect also on your wisdom and reflect also on your areas, like everybody else, including me, that we want some more, that we want to put in the effort to cultivate some more. Huh? Is that okay? After all, that's why you came here. For the Dhamma, as Frank said, for the wisdom, for the compassion. So it's got to do with, we can only work with what we've got and what we know. We can't actually work with what we don't know and what we haven't got. But of course, we need to realize, actually we've got nothing and actually we know nothing. Oh, that's transcendental. Huh? That's emptiness. But on the way, let's just work with what we've got, what we know. In the brain is now identified that in the first step of balancing decisiveness, whilst we have to accept uncertainty, the limbic and the prefrontal cortex is called upon. And then when we execute the decision, the striatum is called upon. And I'll show you the brain later in another slide, yeah? The balancing of, we're always, at difficult, challenging times, we're always balancing the immediate reward versus the long-term reward and consequences. We're balancing. Including all that once I was mentioning in the pandemic period. Huh? Shall I wear my mask now or later? Shall I go out now? Shall I volunteer to have my vaccination? Shall I cut the queue because I'm a very important person? Shall I wait for my turn patiently? Or shall I scream to tell everybody, don't you realize I need it first? Which also have some sensibilities about it, you know. And I respect that too. Because thousands, millions of people are screaming for it, understandably. Yeah. Whilst there are also a smaller group who don't want it. And we also have to understand that. And we also have to accept that, because part of wisdom includes the capacity to take in multiple perspectives, multiple views. Instead of just getting angry at the person because your view is different from my view. And I'm sure my view is the correct and wise one, and you are just a bloody fool. Careful, 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 careful. I'm telling myself. Moral dilemmas, yeah. Different parts of the brain. Isn't it interesting? For urgent, hot decision, there's one part of the brain. For not so urgent decisions, for decisions we can take our time, so to speak, there's another part of the brain. Isn't that interesting? But of course, those two parts of the brain are connected. Yeah. Good decisions come from learning from the experience of bad decisions made. When you deeply understand that, you also come to realize there's in fact no such thing as a good decision or a bad decision. We just hope we decided, and we just hope and pray it is right enough for that time at that moment. I really salute the ex-Prime Minister of Britain, Blair. What's his first name? Huh?
Tony Blair.
Tony Blair. Tony Blair came out recently, and I got the clip from him. Almost with tears in his eyes, he told the audience, "This is Tony Blair. I'm sorry. I made the wrong decision. I joined in the war against what I thought was people having weapons of mass destruction. And I decided we have to join the Americans in their war, which became my war. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." He didn't say so many times sorry. I'm just hamming it up, okay? but I felt his sorry through his eyes, and his voice cracked at that moment. And I told myself, this is such a wise, compassionate man. An aspect of him that I never saw when he was the Prime Minister. No, I did actually. There were moments that I did. But of course, the news for what it is will play both sides of every leader. But there we all are, to be able to next slide. To reflect, and to keep self-understanding. And that is in the medial prefrontal cortex, which is just behind the forehead. Just behind the forehead. That's the self-reflecting. That both the Buddha and all philosophers and all spiritual people and all wise, compassionate people get to. And Plato said, the unexamined life is not worth living. The problem is sometimes we have to examine it whether we like it or not. Self-affirmations, which I've said about, we now realize, and I want you to remember, recall right now, all your wisdom, and before the session is over, I want you to share with us all your areas and examples of your wisdom and your compassion. Can you please do that in the last half hour? To affirm yourself. And believe me, when you affirm yourself, you affirm all of us. Because that is the antidote to enormous negativity that all of us have towards ourselves, let alone towards others, and to the whole world. But towards ourselves, we're so negative, constantly negative. See how I screw up my face now? So negative. Instead of saying it calmly, with joy. We're also negative. But to be able to affirm the positive simultaneously. Does that make sense? Be curious and always review your accomplishments, especially your last meditation of the day. The last meditation of the day, review the 3 G's again. Huh? What are 3 G's? What good I've done today? And it doesn't have to be earth-shattering. It's already bloody good that you're here. It's already very good that you're present to yourself and to this Sangha right now. What good you've done today? What can you be glad and grateful for today? And what goodness you can look forward to tomorrow. From yourself to others and from others to you. GGG. Huh? Be curious. Review your accomplishments every night. The Dalai Lama does it through loving kindness meditation. The Dalai Lama does it every morning at 4 a.m., mainly through loving kindness meditation. He even, right at the start of the day, read it and work out what's the best good he can do, to where, to who. And when he comes out of the meditation, he goes for it. That's his agenda for the day. The third or fourth G. But he goes through the first, second, third, fourth G first. Don't forget to give yourself love and kindness first. Huh? Don't forget to give yourself compassion first. Humor. Humor. We already were laughing when we were together earlier on. Yeah? It's so good, you know. It's the best medicine. To laugh with, not to laugh at, to laugh with, especially to laugh with ourselves. Time for a joke. There's this guy arrives late at work. And the boss looks at him and yells at him, "You should have been here at 8:30 a.m. The guy looks at the boss and says, "Why? Did something happen?" You got it. Next slide. So I'll try and see whether the pointer works now. Yes, it does. Thank you, Meredith. This is the front of the brain. This is the side view of the brain. This is the whole brain. So the frontal part of the brain, just remember 3 parts. The anterior cingulate gyrus, don't even try to pronounce those words. The prefrontal cortex, which I have mentioned already. The prefrontal cortex is the main area. And then the orbitofrontal cortex. And these lines, don't worry about it. If you want to thoroughly receive from these slides, Google. It's there. Google Dilip Jess. Google the neuroscience of wisdom. And you find this slide. Next slide. I would just use that so that you now know in the prefrontal cortex, remember that area in the brain? Yeah. It is the executive center. It is the area where we reflect and we self-understand. And it is no wonder through scientific research, including the happiest man in the world, Matthew Ricard, including all the monks and nuns and the rest of us who volunteered to go through the brain scan. When someone is enlightened, when someone is more and more enlightened, when someone is most of the time in the wisdom and compassion, this part of the brain is lighted up all the time. For mere mortal like me, I'm sure many of you are lighted up much more than me. For mere mortal like me, it lights up occasionally. But I'm very serious about helping myself to light it up more often. Through my psychological journey, through my spirituality, through my learning from life, through my experiencing the Tao. The medial front, it is still the prefrontal cortex, but the medial part of it is where the pro-social activities, empathy, compassion. The anterior cingulate, I remember the ACG that I told you not to worry. That's where the awareness, the tolerating, the learning, the acceptance, the social decision making, and the pragmatic knowledge, otherwise known as wisdom. That area of the brain is the most lighted. And as you know, through neuroimaging, the way we know which part of the brain is most active is to pick up the amount of sugar that part of the brain is using. And neuroimaging is the capacity, the technology we have now available shows that part of the brain lighting up because it's using a lot of sugar, using a lot of energy. It is energized, it's working. Yeah. But also remember, just because it is the main part, it doesn't mean the rest of the brain is not working. Don't forget that. The whole brain is working. And it just happens to be at this stage of research, that particular part appears to be more active. Does it make sense? I say that to you too, because I want you to know there'll never ever be a drug created that can just stimulate that part of the brain. You got it? Because it needs the whole brain, and it needs more than the whole brain. It needs the whole body, and it needs more than the whole body. It needs the mind, which is not the same as the brain, as the Dalai Lama says. But the mind is hardwired this way. Anterior cingulate gyrus, dorsal anterior cingulate gyrus. Orbitofrontal cortex is the one behind our eyeballs. Decisiveness, despite uncertainties. Oh my God, the ambiguities of life. I should have said, oh my Buddha, shouldn't I? Next slide. So thank you, Dilip, again, and all the people before Dilip, and people right now still working on this scale, improving it. And you can do it on Google. Google SD Wise. And you will have the 28 questions, and you can fill it up within 5 to 10 minutes along these 6 parameters that I've already used and mentioned. And you will identify the questions from each of these areas. You don't have to do that. Just answer. Just tick the boxes. And it will give you your scale. But more importantly, which believe me, you'll be pleasantly surprised, is higher than you thought. But believe me, the bit that you also can use, which is you're going to share with us, I hope, in the last 30 minutes, and we're coming to it now, it's almost 8:30, is the bits that you want to cultivate some more. You want to stimulate some more. Huh? Yeah. You want to bring forth some more. cultivation. Next slide. That's the one. Becoming wiser faster. What an oxymoron. What a ridiculous sentence. How can it be faster? But the word faster is put in there because we're all wanting everything faster. Why not? So let's not waste time. And that's why we're here this evening. Because we are aware, hey, we haven't got much time left. So reflect for a moment, and I'm going to start meditation very soon. Reflect on your self-reflective capacity. Reflect on your pro-social activities, your ability to open to new experiences. The Dalai Lama says, every year go somewhere you've never been before. And I'm so glad Jonathan and sister are here because it's the first time you're in this room. And you're so glad that Sangha Lodge is here now. And I still remember months ago, your first time in Sangha Lodge. Because you are open. You're open to new experience. And may we keep our heart and mind open. Cultivating empathy, compassion, being mindful. Such a simple word, but not so easy. Huh? Mindful. Am I mindful of myself now? Am I mindful of you now? Are you mindful of yourself now? Are you mindful of everyone around you? Try to get rid of me. Don't be too mindful of me. Are you mindful of others around you?
I'm mindful of your words.
Of my?
Your words.
My words. Okay. That's correct. I hope we also get to being mindful of the emotions embedded in the words, as I'm sure you do. Emotional regulation, spirituality. How's your spiritual journey? How's your emotional regulation? Hey, surprise, surprise, but not a surprise. How well are you taking care of your body? The first step of the Satipatthana Sutta, mindfulness of the body. You exercise your body regularly? You following the good nutrition? And there's so much more in the media on very better and better nutrition as we learn more and more about nutrition. Hey, you got enough sleep? You got a long enough, deep enough sleep? And at our age, many of us at our age, you remember to have your power naps through the day? Remember to have your siesta? Very important. Actually, I originally typed sleep hygiene, but the computer put in a comma. But it's a nice error because hygiene is also important. Including, we've actually all learned the correct way of washing our hands. The pandemic has actually taught us the right hygiene in simply washing our hands, because most of the time, most of our life, we haven't actually washed our hands. We think we did. We haven't even given time for the soap to work. And there are many lovely songs you can sing or things you can hum when you're walking, washing your hands, as the pandemic advises us so well, including counting 1 to 20. Better than counting happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me. And for some of us, okay, Sarah, whatever will be, will be. As we Enjoy mindfully washing the hands slowly, lovingly, kindly, compassionately, which takes time. Care of the body. Next, that's the book. Next, time to meditate. I made it by 8:33. Did I make it? I love the way my wife smiles. I love it. She makes me very happy. It goes both ways. Sit in your favorite meditative posture as you're accustomed to. As usual, Satipatthana Sutta, step 1, just be mindful of your body. And one nice way that many of us do is be mindful of receiving support from the ground, from the chair, from the cushion. Actually receive the support. And with your spine, a straight line, be centered. And sit, welcoming yourself home to your own body. Come home to yourself. And sit with the majesty of the mountain. And breathe and keep right, slow, gentle, in a friendly, kind to each and every breath. And from each breath to yourself, the life force, the breath. With care, with kindness, with compassion. Keep breathe with the beautiful sound of the breath. Thank you, man. Breathe with the breath. Thank you. And then, if you wish, if you want to, reflect on the last 65 minutes or so of being together in this room. What was good for you? What was useful for you? In this community, in this Sunday, just sitting together. And then if you like, reflect upon those 6 components of wisdom, which is also the 6 components of compassion, so you have realized. What are my take-home sentences? Including maybe which components I want to cultivate some more. if you wish. But first, affirm what you already have, what you already are. And of course, when you do this don't time space, as you do regularly meditating, take longer, take as long as you. But for here, for now, in the service of time, Sangha, this beautiful Sangha that we with the sound of the bell. Slowly open your eyes. Slowly. And I do this with myself, and I do this with everyone that happens to be with me on the same path. I also say, activate the four Brahma Viharas. So if you like, if you wish, put the palms of your hands together and lovingly, kindly attend to yourself. Lovingly, kindly. Through the warmth of your hand. Lovingly, kindly. And then the next activation, hold yourself. Embrace yourself. Self-compassion. And then if you can, or if it follows naturally, and Frank knows how to do this very well, smile. Be glad. I'm so glad you're here, Frank. Be glad. And I always look forward to your smiling. And everybody else will smile. And I too benefited from the equanimity just now. And keep and protect all the four. Every time we know we've slipped out of one of them or all of them, awareness. Return to them as soon as we can. Even in 1 minute. As most of you can. When you drop into it. Time for sharing. Please share. Yes, Frank.
The first book I read about 50 years ago was The Dhammapada. I always loved poetry, especially on my own mother's language. But I learned one thing from it, and it stayed with me for many years. more than 50. Silently shall I endure abuse, for the world is ill nature.
Frank, could you repeat that slowly?
Silently
Silently
shall I
shall I
endure
endure
abuse,
abuse,
for the world
for the world
is ill nature.
is
Ill nature.
ill nature.
Ill nature.
Repeat it again, even slower, even deeper as you can, so that we record it some more.
Silently
shall I endure
abuse, for the world is ill nature. So it changed my reaction
to think
what happened to me through words and deeds, feelings. But then I noticed that I became quieter, more peaceful. And my wife of 60 years, when she noticed it, that I was just a, simple guy who is staying in his own heart, she became more aggressive. And it happened in the workplace, like I get some unjust. And
people notice that I do not react with anger or with malice. And after 50 years, I was thinking, where is your wisdom, Frank? And then it took me a long time that I realized that I took the right choice. No matter whatever happens, I will be just peaceful, understanding, and not react with a vicious mind or deeds.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
talking about wisdom tonight, if nothing else, that I learned that.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
I thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing so deeply. Thank you, wives. Thank you right now to the wife in you. You too are a wife. And I just received that from you. Thank you, Frank the wife.
Can I just say, following on from Frank, that it seems that if we can get rid of our ignorance, we're left with wisdom. Well, implying, I guess, that we already have wisdom within us, like goodness and all the other major virtues. We can just get rid of the opposites: ignorance, aversion.
Absolutely.
But I was also thinking one other aspect of wisdom that I think the Buddha demonstrates, and that's the what I would call the ineffability of it. So that if you're in the presence of someone who's wise, you sort of know it without having to go down and tick off various points.
You can actually feel it. You can actually experience it. When the Dalai Lama walks into the room, everybody. When Nelson Mandela walked into the room, everybody. And it is ineffable. at that very deep level.
And I could imagine going to the Dalai Lama with a question that's troubling me. And I go all the way to see him in Dharamsala.
You know, Jonathan, every time I'm with you, I experience a bit of that ineffability. And it's happening again right now.
Well, I thought it the first time I met you.
Ooh.
See, that's, and you may not have known it, but you see, that's often what's happening. If we're sensitized to the possibility, and then you know, at least I had in me the knowledge that there is wisdom about it. Because it's not obvious all the time in the world.
Thank you for sharing.
But I thought if I was going to the Dalai Lama with a question, the question might be something like, it's troubling me, that I think is the most important question in the world, which is, suppose I'm a married man and I go to see him and I want to know, do I really love my wife? For example. And to me, and I'm married, so it's not a question for me now, but it could be any sort of question. And you would go and you would expect an answer. But with the Dalai Lama, the answer would be in the way he looked at you with compassion. and then the question dissolves.
As I look at you too. With the humor as well.
Very important.
You answer your own question so well. Some more sharing. You can say, you don't have to ask somebody else to say. You say, take courage. Take your time to say, take your time to say.
In compassion, I always use my wisdom to decide what to do.
Bingo. That's it.
Right.
That's it.
In the case of those refugees coming in, I have compassion, but I still have to think of wisdom to deal with it. So I want to ask you whether I'm doing the right thing or the wrong thing. To use wisdom for compassion in this case.
Your first answer is?
I don't know. I want to ask your opinion.
The two wings of the butterfly. The butterfly cannot work at all with one wing. The butterfly can't fly. And I know you want to fly. And whenever you fly, because you want to fly, it's always both wings. And you already noticed that when you seemingly forget one wing, I think tonight you've got to that wing, because you actually just now said, I mustn't forget my wisdom. And that is one of the commonest conditions for all of us. And everybody who comes to see me for help professionally is just like me and is just like you. We're pretty good at compassion. It always can be improved. But the compassion that we need, which comes with the wisdom from the Buddha that says, first, who do you give the compassion to?
To yourself.
That's wisdom. And you just took care of yourself just now.
But as Buddha say, we have to think of the other way too. So
it's all in there. But don't forget to think about yourself. Don't forget to think for yourself. Don't forget to take care of yourself first. That's the bit most of us.
Some people will say that you're selfish. You're thinking. Yeah.
You are one of the most selfless persons I've ever met. You are so selfless that you now need the wisdom to be selfless for yourself. To be selfless for yourself. Because selfish is not for the self. You're attending to yourself. It's not selfish at all. And please keep attending to yourself. First, the Dalai Lama attends to himself first, every morning. Every moment. You remember that moment in, what was that? What's that famous Master Chef show that is coming back, Master Chef? They invited the Dalai Lama to be a judge. Remember that one? Oh. And then what he said when the three chefs told him, you've got to judge, you've got to give a score. And he looked at them and said, I'm not here to judge. I'm not here to judge. And please stop judging yourself. Please stop. Please stop. Please. You're not stopping. And all the Dalai Lama did, and the best part for him of the whole program, he got into the kitchen. And he said thank you to each and every cook there. And then you ask people about that show, they tell you that's the highlight of that show. Nothing to do with who was the winner. Because like the Dalai Lama, you too do not want to judge. Most of all, those that are bad. Whatever others, those that are. Then you are much better. Attending to so many people that you want to attend to. Attending to the whole world that you want to attend to. Attending to the refugee in each of us. All of us are refugees. All of us are refugees. That's why we take refuge. I can stop yelling. I get very excited.
Thank you for solving my dilemma.
Oh, I hope. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for saying thank you.
Yeah, there's a comment and a question on Zoom.
Yes. Hello, Zuma.
I'm not sure how to pronounce the name. Gawain or Joanne.
Gawain. He's the president of the Buddhist Council.
Okay.
Gawain. Hello, Gawain.
Gawain says, wisdom can be very confronting. For example, hate is never overcome by hate. Hate is only overcome by love. This is a universal law.
Thank you, Gawain.
And a question from Anna. Are we trying to get rid of something or understand it and then have a better relationship with it?
Yes, that's it. Actually, we are not getting rid of something. But I know what you meant just now by getting rid of, yeah. But what that Zuma said is in the same place, but phrased deeper in a sense, yeah. We can't ever totally get rid of da 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 da. But what we can do is to reduce, is to tame, is to temper what needs to be got rid of in ourselves. Ignorance, hatred, and delusion. And in terms of wisdom, the opposite of wisdom, as Jonathan says, is ignorance. But the lay word for ignorance is foolishness. Wisdom is against foolishness, huh? But in the deep spiritual sense, it's ignorance. The Buddha never judges anyone. The Buddha never says anybody is selfish or anybody is bad. The Buddha says, you're just ignorant. Did you get that from the Buddha? You just need to be enlightened. It comes from ignorance. And as Frank says, the Buddha is already inside you. It's just a matter of reducing the dark side and bringing in the light, to reduce our endarkenment and to bring in our enlightenment. Yeah, but it's actually not getting rid of the darkness, because you can never get rid of mud. Mud will always be there. Most importantly, in yourself, in myself. But keep working through the mud. Isn't it? Something like that. I talk too much. What's the next one?
That's all.
That's all. Thank you, Gawain, and thank you. What's the name of the Anna? A-N-N-A. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Gawain.
There's time for one more sentence.
Meredith, is there time for one more from Frank?
Just
Once
these are the Buddha's words. He said, you can go through the entire universe, the world, wherever, looking for a person more deserving your compassion than you yourself. You will never find that person, because you deserve your compassion more than anything or anyone in the world.
Can you look at her and say to her,
Yes.
lovingly, compassionately, non-theoretically, say to her,
You will never find a person more deserving your compassion than yourself. It's always good to know, because we are so harsh on ourselves, judging ourselves, and it's not the right thing to do. One more short thing, if I may.
is there time for one more short thing, Meredith?
Very short.
No one's complaining.
Last Thursday, we had Dr. Page talking about grief. Grief, I translate it straight away, dukkha. And as I looked up, I was touched, really so happy that fantastic people, doctors teaching me, and I hardly had any schooling. But then I noticed that there was a small hole on Dr. Page's sock on the right foot. And then it made me smile. And then dukkha, the realization that even the doctors and the old pastry cooks are in the same boat. Dukkha. I don't have to prove myself becoming this or that. Dr. Page has the same dukkha what I have. And it's all common. And that made me happy to realize that I'm not lower. He looked higher than I am. He was so nice talking to. And one small hole on the sock gave me insight.
And I'm so glad this evening you saw very big holes all over my body. Thank you.
Thank you. I thank you.
And you so much want to catch up with your wisdom, to reciprocate, to give and receive from Jonathan's wisdom, even through the topic of grief. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I promise not to say anything more.
All right. Thank you. I don't know about you, but I thoroughly enjoy these sessions. I feel like I'm one half a degree wiser because of immersing with all these people with wisdom. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Eng-Kong. Thank you.